Ohio, Mina-san, what's up, weebs and casuals alike? We are Baka and Company, and we're here to provide you with a deep dive into all your random anime shows and movies. We'll talk about both new and old, good and bad, and everything in between, and get prepared for some hot takes.
Oh,
On this episode, we have myself, the aeronautical ace, Drewtendo64, and we have the pilot of our dreams, it's Magically Average.
oh, no, so
If you
sweet.
have if you haven't guessed it already, we're kind of in a Ghibli mood, so we're going to be talking about The Wind Rises, directed by the one, the only Hayao Miyazaki. This one came out in 2013, so it's a more recent one, um, and it's different from what they usually do because it's historically based. So they have a very
My
uh,
gosh.
a very well planned out story to follow with a beginning and an end. Fortunately, I don't believe Miyazaki went crazy with storyboarding as he usually does and then made up a story because, hey, we got fact here for once.
Yeah.
But one of the many things that the Wind Rises revolves around is our main character Jiro Horikoshi, who is a young man who wants to become a pilot, but he finds out that his nearsightedness isn't going to allow him to be a pilot. So one night he dreams of his idol, an aircraft designer named Giovanni Battista Caprone, who
The most
basically tells,
Italian sounding name known
oh
to
yeah,
man.
and basically through these unique dream sequences, he discovers the magic of flight and kind of does a whole bunch of things to become an aeronautical engineer because he realizes he can't fly. And that brings me to one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and it's not the dream sequence. It's when he's on the train and you hear the earthquake before it happens.
Yeah.
To me, was a very Ghibli thing to do because they've done that with other terrors, enemies in the forest, or like big bads coming out, and for the enemy, quote unquote, to be this earthquake that also is very amazingly animated was super cool. So I really enjoyed that part. Like
Yeah.
just seeing the ground come up in chunks and it be all like perfect squares and stuff.
It gave me like the beginning scene in Princess Mononoke with the beast that comes out of the forest and
Yeah.
like how it's animated and it keeps switching between like the earth rumbling and then back to the train where people are like, "What's going on?"
And again, that's also based on fact. Like an actual earthquake happened at that time in his life, and it was one of the bigger ones to hit Japan at the time. So it was actually dubbed the Great Kanto Earthquake. In that scene, he also helps a young woman that he laughs at his hat flying away, but she dives out to kind of grab it right before the earthquake happens. So her name's Nahoko. Nahoko? Man, I'm bad with
Mm.
names today.
There's a lot of them in this. We're not going to
There
remember
are.
many.
That's for us English speakers. That's the problem that we have. Same with the dubbing crew. They do their best and kind of segue into that cast. Um, for whatever reason, Disney just goes out of their way to find the best people that must be, in my mind, either on a list or just traveling nearby. So we have Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jiro. Um, and then for some of the younger fans out there, his young version of him is actually voiced by Zach Callison. Some of you might know him as Steven Universe. For Nahoko Satomi, we have Emily Blunt, which, again, how are you pulling that? Well,
I
I'll tell you how they're getting Emily Blunt because Kiro Hanjo is her husband, John Krasinski. So you
like
got Jim from The Office just showing up.
it always blows my mind when we go through the voice actors in Ghibli films, which by my recollection, they're never in two Ghibli films. They're only ever like in one.
I believe so.
It's like you never see like repeat offenders. Like, some studios will try to find like the same voice actor even if it's different movies because they like them. But like Ghibli is always just who's the some of the biggest stars we can find in America. let's just reach out and see. And every single one of them is always just like, yes, please, God, yes, get me in this film.
Well, and the best part about that, that's not where this list dies down,
No,
because
I
the list
know.
just gets crazier from then on. So we got Kurokawa, who's Jiro's like short-tempered boss, which is voiced by Martin Short, comedy legend.
Hilarious.
We have one of the other uh, German gentlemen is Hans Kastrup, voiced by Werner Herzog. Like,
Which
okay,
if you saw
awesome.
the first season of The Mandalorian, you'd know who Werner Herzog is.
I want to see the baby.
I yeah, there you go. So
Yeah.
he's got that very recognizable accent. I want to see the baby.
And then you got Satomi, who's voiced by William H. Macy. Jiro's mom is voiced by Eddie Merman. Um, Kaio Horikoshi is voiced by Mae Whitman, who is also in Star Wars right now, I believe.
Like
Right?
yeah, like just we're going down way further into the list, and it's just still like, again,
Well,
it's full accolades to Ghibli because all these different actors are like dying to get their hands on a a role in a Ghibli film for good
because you
reasons
can
too.
say like, yeah, I got to be in a Ghibli, right?
Yeah,
Like
like
it's
it's a
amazing.
huge accolade. Like it's like honestly, I would go so far given especially like those in recent films from Disney. Like Ghibli, it's more of an well, not I don't want to call it accomplishment. It's like a higher tier to say I was a voice actor in a Studio Ghibli film than it is at this point to say like I was a voice actor in a Disney film. Like it's just that
Yeah,
weird for many
it's
people who don't know or understand. You're just like that's backwards. But then for everyone who does, who's seen Ghibli films for years and years and years, it's like no, that's how it should be. Like
no, like I agree, because like you look at other films, whether they be animated or live action, and a lot of the noise around it is like, I'm fortunate enough to be in this film, or I was lucky, or I
yeah,
get to be in this film. Whereas it's almost a gift to be in a Ghibli film, because they aligned the character with who you are and what you can bring to it, not the other way around. They don't build the character and then go, oh, like, this is a John Krasinski character. Let's see if
yeah,
he's available. No, like, these are already fully fleshed out, voiced by the Japanese artists that they're voiced by, right?
right.
So diving further into the list, we have Hattori, who is Mandy Patinkin. Like, okay. We have Jennifer Grey in there. We got Stanley Tucci.
Which
A lo-
like when you read that name, I was like, what the hell, Stanley Tucci too? Oh my gosh.
but Stanley Tucci is Caproni. So again, like, he's got that charisma. He's got that like, I'm
Yeah.
fancy as hell kind of voice,
Well,
and that works for him.
and to like finish up the voice acting piece too, I in when my wife and I saw The Wind Rises in theater for Ghibli Fest a couple weeks back, and at the end they had like a really quick snippet of the Hayao Miyazaki documentary, and it was about The Wind Rises, and he was going through like, okay, who should voice Jiro, the main character, and he's like, okay, well, as a person, Jiro was, an intellectual, but that means he doesn't really know how to speak. Every sentence was very short. Every sentence was very analytical. Every sentence had purpose. He's not just going to talk to talk. He's like, who could embody that? And they were going through different people, and he's like, no, no. And then I hope I get this right, but I think Miyazaki was like, who, give me the director for Evangelion, because I guess he worked with him on an Evangelion project, I want to say. And they have the guy come in and he's like, I've never done voice acting. And he's like, don't worry, just go in the booth, read these lines. And he starts reading them, and they pan over to Miyazaki, and he's like, that's our guy. That's him. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. And they all just start laughing. And he's like, guess what? You're him. Congratulations. So I guess in the subbed version, the voice actor for Jiro is also the director for like the Evangelion movies.
Yeah,
So it's
Hideki
just
Ono.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's hilarious how, I mean, how that came up, but it also speaks to the fact that, like, to what you were saying, when Miyazaki's going through and finding the people that are best suited for these roles. I mean, he's not creating a character around someone in mind. He's developing that character and then going, all right, who's the best fit? You are, because you embody these personalities, or you have the type of voice that I would envision this character having. It's always very, there's a lot of strategy behind it. And I think, again, that speaks to why most of the dubs, I'm going to emphasize most because I know people are going to scream about a couple, most of the dubs for Ghibli films are excellent, like really well casted, really well done. It they just are like perfect in my mind in terms of the casting and translation over from the subbed versions.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Like it's again another like out of the ballpark, like fantastic casting choice. Like
Oh yeah.
last but not least, we have Sone, who is voiced by Elijah Wood. Like
Oh, I can't.
just
Yeah, just
just throwing him in there, like they're just casually, but again, they do a very good job picking who gets to be in these movies, and it's just beautiful, and that ties in with the whole theme of the movie too, because the voices obviously make an impact. You have people
mhm.
who sound like they belong to the face that they're portraying. Their inflections on like whether they're angry or distraught or happy. Like nothing sounds like the cookie cutter early 90s anime where you
Right.
find it at the back of a Target and the dust is covering the VHS case and it's like
Everyone,
neon pop
yeah,
bubblegum crisis or whatever those were and it's like hello, hi.
yeah, everyone sounds like they're being like recorded in an echo chamber for some reason. They all have like the
Or
weird, like either the weird like echoiness or staticiness or something. It's always
yeah,
there's
there's
something
always
weird.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And mouth syncing wasn't a thing, so it was just like,
Yeah, you just
hello,
did.
how are you?
You did your best,
It's
but
like what happens to me sometimes when I don't look at the camera.
but it, as great as the voice acting cast is for The Wind Rises, I think the thing that stood out for me the most, because this was the first time I'd ever seen it, was when my wife and I went to the movies and saw it. Which again, I highly recommend. If you've never seen many of the Ghibli films, or you just want to rewatch them, if you have the opportunity to go watch them in theater, it's obvious. Watching most things in theater is better. It's just it adds a whole new level to like Ghibli films, from like the sound and the audio visual effects of it all to, you know, even for older ones, like it's just it pops more in theater. But watching the film for the first time, what really stood out to me the most, and is likely going to be a controversial statement, is the scenery and environments. And again, gonna put myself out there to be skewered. I really believe that The Wind Rises has some of the best environmental visuals and scenery in any Ghibli film, which is saying a lot because most of the ones that we've talked about, Mononoke, Ponyo, even like Porco Rosso, have a large emphasis on sceneries and how different environments are captured. And they all do a fantastic job, but there was something different with The Wind Rises. Like everything felt more alive in every scene. Like even things way off in the back. Whereas like in other Ghibli films you have like the that obvious animation style where you're like, they're gonna go to that building because all these other buildings are kind of blurry. You know, it's like
I
it's what
wonder why.
it's like what every other like it's what every film, every video game you play does, where it's like, I wonder which door in this hallway is interactable. Oh, the one that's kind of shiny looking. Don't mind me. Like the Wind Rises didn't really have that. Like every single scene, every single piece to the what they were trying to capture, whether it was like buildings on the seaside or the boats that were in the water, or like large spanning shots of them traveling through countryside on the train, like everything was so vibrant and it felt alive. Like it felt like you were in, and it's again cheesy to say, it's like you were like there kind of
Yeah.
experiencing it all. And that's a huge. I mean, obviously, animation has come a long way since the original Studio Ghibli films, and then obviously The Wind Rises. But um, it screams just how much emphasis they've put into capturing those types of moments and capturing like scenery in a very specific way and environments in a very specific way. Because, as to what you had noted at the beginning, this is a historical film
Hmm.
to some degree, right? I mean, they take some obviously creative pieces here and there. Because if you go and actually read the history, there's actually some very strong differences, but still based on a true person, still based on their life in Japan and what they offered. I should not even say offered, what they meant to the Japanese uh, aircraft manufacturing and again, as tough as it is to say, to their war efforts and everything like that, was a very meaningful and impactful person. So it's hard to, turn that, especially being a Ghibli film, into something that's entertaining. And I think they did it very well by putting so much emphasis on making everything look fantastic. This was one of the most visually appealing in terms of every aspect, from the characters, the scenes. Like every shot was just so well done that I was like, this is surprising, given how little fantastical things are happening. Like it's not like Ponyo where things are just turning into giant, like waves are turning into giant fishes. It's not Spirited Away where it's just chaos from beginning to end. It's not Howl's Moving Castle where people just turn into giant sludge jelly beings. Like, you're limited because you are trying to portray a historical figure and capture their story, but it's still so incredibly entertaining because of the simple fact that they did put so much into their environments and their scenes. Like, I thought it was wonderful.
I can't agree more because I am honestly the background loving child that I am, and Ghibli never disappoints. So um,
Never.
their history with how they animate and do things is like, if we go all the way back to like Nausicaa. Nausicaa had to be animated by like a team of people in different buildings, in different towns, in different cities, and basically they were all given their job to animate and storyboard and background whatever they had, and then they mailed it in and put it together. So like, seeing them go from a very interesting history of animating in a unique way to having something that was so fleshed out, unique, and beautiful. Like, there's one of the beginning parts is when Jiro's looking down as the sun rises, and it's in his dream plane, the one with the feathers at the beginning. So he's up in the air and he looks down through the clouds, and the way the sun chases the shadows off of the meadows is so real and so beautiful and fluid that for a moment, while I'm watching that scene, I forgot dream. I was like, is he dreaming or is he actually in this plane? Like, did he make this? Is this his dream? I can't remember. Because this is the second time I've seen the film, and I might see it the third time this weekend because I just found out one of the local theaters has it in theaters this weekend.
Ooh,
Ooh.
I definitely
Um,
would.
yeah, exactly. So, um, they've done they've done great work, and I don't find that
Yeah,
this in a point where they would slow down. Like, seeing what they've done more recently is a little concerning, but um,
yeah.
that's because Miyazaki or Hayao isn't in charge. But they're to take a dark page out of Japan's own history. Like, the film starts way before World War II because he's a child, he's growing up, he's going to school, he's learning, and then eventually they fly him out to Germany to see like these massive steel planes, because at the point in the 30s, Japan's still using um, like wood and canvas. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not building everything with steel yet. They're using steel brackets, or maybe they're using steel tension rods, things like that, but they're not fully steel. So even incorporating where he got his inspiration from. He goes back. He's promoted to like the chief designer for the fighter plane competition later on, sponsored by the Imperial Navy. So like his design doesn't do well. It's that one that has the engine die midway through and they barely land on the aircraft carrier. I
Yeah.
also thought that was a great scene because like the oil splattering on them was very drastic and like it actually carried some weight because later on they have to wash it off. And again, they do like there's little scenes that Ghibli puts too much work into, like the fact that they have them scrubbing themselves clean in the middle of a warship. You didn't need that. It was just, but it brings more life to their characters. Like their characters become relatable, their characters become
Yeah.
humanized, and especially with this being a history piece, right? And then as the movie moves on, and yes, they do get involved with a certain regime of a certain man who has a mustache. Um, but again, it's not that they focus on these things. They acknowledge it, they understand it, and it's compartmentalized. There we go. That's the
Hmm.
word. Um, into an easy to digest way. Like it's shocking to see um, people acknowledge history lately because we're in a way that a lot of people want to ignore certain atrocities or they want to ignore certain things that happened as you have on our previous Baka Bites that we talked about. But like for a film company to be like, this is who we are as a people, this is who we are as animators, and this is who we are as storytellers. Like I don't I don't put the Wind Rises out there as like my go to recommend for Ghibli movies, but it's going to be up there. If someone's like, oh yeah, I've already seen Totoro and you know what, Mononoke is fine, but I want something I don't know different. This is where I would recommend The Wind Rises and very quickly say like, you know what, you're sit down and just enjoy it. Don't. It's not a turn your brain off movie. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Enjoy it because this you come out of this film like learning more because I usually don't go into movies expecting to learn something and like just the whole history of aeronautics and how like the world did not move like you'd think in the 1900s all of everyone's technology was moving at the same pace for everyone.
Yeah.
It was not. So like
Yeah. And that's the biggest piece for me was because like in today's day and age, especially those of us living in the West, so in North America, you have this vision, especially if you haven't been. I've had the luxury of going to Japan twice now. You have this vision of Japan and a lot of the Asian countries as being like the pinnacle for advancement in terms of technology, in terms of human like life and like culture, everything about it. Because not only are many of the Asian countries extremely old, so there's this balance of history and certain practices and certain aspects of their culture that they want to retain with futuristic developments in technology, like just every single aspect of life and how far they've come in terms of where their origination. Like it's shocking to see. Like it's I had the privilege of going to Kyoto, and it's just really weird seeing like a castle, like an actual castle that's thousands and thousands of years old right next to like a shopping area like with brand new
Starbucks.
stores. Yeah, like it's weird because it's like obviously they want to keep the heritage and keep the history alive with certain areas and certain aspects of the Japanese culture, but then again it's like they're moving forward and things have to progress, right? They always have to keep moving forward. You can't step backwards, but you can always look back at where you've come from. And I
Mhm.
think that's something that this movie brings out because throughout the movie, Jiro's close friend is always talking about how like, oh, Japan's so far behind every country. Japan is so poor compared to every country. Japan, and again, like if you don't know a lot of history and you don't understand like the time period leading up to World War II, like you forget that yeah, like Japan was not in a great place. like many countries throughout the entire world at that time, right? Like a lot of other countries were leaving World War One and recovering from that. You have certain pieces to the transition time from the end of World War One into the few years basically where there was nothing happening, where you had the Great Depression in America, which affected a lot of countries around the world as well. Like you just kind of forget that, yeah, Japan wasn't at the forefront where it is nowadays. It's not. And so to see that come out in the film and to see the transition like right at the end where you start to feel like, okay, this was the defining moment. Like not just for the aeronautical industry, right? Not just for the development of airplanes, whether they be for passenger purposes or war purposes. Like this was the moment in time for Japan where it was like the next big advancement. And then obviously most of us know what occurred in World War II, and there was an immediate recovery period after that, but then it's been a slow and steady progression to where they're at now. So it's the looking back and kind of understanding it and seeing it through the perspective of someone in Japan, someone living in Japan. And Miyazaki, the director who's knowledgeable in terms of Jiro and his journey throughout his lifetime as an I keep wanting to say aerospace aeronautical engineer, and you're not getting it from like the westernized version of like, oh, here's the very straightforward depiction of what's going on in Japan. You're seeing it from the Japanese perspective. So that piece of it was also really cool and really interesting to see. It's just, I think the biggest piece to it all, and why I don't think a lot of people enjoy this film as much as others. Like my wife was not a big fan of it. I personally really liked it. Is because it doesn't feel like a Ghibli film, right? Like to what you were saying, where you would suggest this to someone who's like wants to get outside of the Ghibli-esque films, then yeah, I mean like maybe this might cleanse the palate a bit. It's more tame. It's got a very, 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 very basic story. There's an easy progression. There's really not much messaging behind just, whenever you advance, you have the potential to create weapons. Like whatever you do, you can see the beauty in something, but someone's always going to take it and use it for something else, right?
Yeah,
Like that was kind of the message at the end.
yeah,
But
because that's where he gets. Honestly, his inspiration was to just build planes. He wanted to
yeah,
build them. He wanted to fly them. He wanted to experience them, and that's like when you see him in the early dream sequences with Caproni, and he's like, "I can't believe I get to do this now. Like I'm doing them for real." But then the harsh truth of like with an intellect like his, clearly someone else out there is going to monopolize on it and turn it.
everything comes with a consequence. I mean, like even and it's a message that is very much prevalent in today's day and age. I mean, with almost anything. I mean, you can go as big as artificial intelligence and say, yeah, the idea of artificial intelligence is fantastic. You're developing a system by which you can feed it information, and have it learn through machine learning, and eventually you can just start plugging in different parameters and different questions, and it's able to, through different thought like processes, operate like a human brain. Like it's incredible. But then again, look at all of the downsides to what people have already used AI for, and what the speculation is could be leading to even in the future. So like with every great advancement, there's two sides to it. There's what the intention is and what the hopes and dreams of it are used for, and then there's the abuse and destruction of it through someone who's either, or people who are either very egotistical or want to just monopolize it, like you said. Like there's a lot of different aspects to it, but yeah, I mean that message is very, very clear in the wind rises. And I think again, that's probably a reason why a lot of people are like about it, because it's not a Totoro, it's not a Mononoke, it's not a Howl's Moving Castle or Spirited Away or anything, right? It is very much grounded in reality. The only real fantastical nature to it is the dream sequences with Caproni, and even those, it's not like they're making airplanes that can, you know, fly at a bajillion miles an hour. It's still within the realm of possibilities during that day and age, right? They're not thinking of different ways to develop a plane that are outside of feasibility during that time period. It's like, here's a plane that I made, but it's got extra wings. And it's like, whoa, that's incredible.
You
This
get
one
like three
carries,
wings on that thing.
yeah, this one carries people, and it's just to transport people around. Oh my god, no one thought of that. Like, it's that sort of thing. So I mean, in my mind, again, it's it's a very good movie, and I think it would have been received better, in my personal opinion, if it didn't have the Ghibli stamp on it. Like, if it came out as just a, here's an animated film about Japan post World War One leading up to World War Two, and it follows an aeronautical engineer who just wants to make planes because he sees the beauty in flying and soaring through the sky. And you left it at that, I think people would be like, okay, this was a good film. This was I liked it. I enjoyed it. But because it's got the Ghibli name attached to it, people are like, this is
It's a
boring.
heartwarming romance.
Yeah, yeah, or yeah, they focus, yeah, because it's just like, oh, it's just a romance story, and his wife is, I get spoilers. Sorry, his wife is dying. Like, I know. But yeah, I mean, it almost does like a disservice to it, because it is, in again, my opinion, it is quite a good film. But because it doesn't have that Ghibli flavor to it that everyone just craves, in which it's got to be extraordinary, it's got to bend your mind and imagination, and both, not like visually and storytelling wise, like it has to encompass all those things to really embody what a true Ghibli film is. Because it doesn't have that, it doesn't have the fingerprint of what a Ghibli film should be. People are just like, yeah, it's okay.
Well, it's you know what, you're doing yourself a disservice if you think that, and if you go into any of these films expecting something, because I find that's the biggest disservice you can do to yourself, is having an expectation for a Ghibli film, because more often than not it'll go a different way. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
remember the first one I ever watched was Kiki's Delivery Service, and the way they advertised it on TV, happy-go-lucky story, just a little witch, she's gonna have fun. At no point in time did any of the like later themes, or even the fact that she has a bad time, you didn't expect that, because you're like, oh, it's the Disney brand, they must know what they're doing, bringing
Yeah,
this movie over from Japan.
nothing bad
No,
happens in
it's
Disney films.
no, I was wrong. And then the second one I watched was Mononoke, and then the third was Spirited Away. But
Oh, just
again,
got progressively darker and darker.
right? But that's the other thing too. The way I was in college when Spirited Away was being promoted, and it was like, you're not going to believe what this film does. It's visually stunning. It's from the same guys that did all these other films. I'm like, okay, yeah, I've seen those. And people, I went to a film school and an art school, and people were just like, you got to watch it. It's going to change how you think about animated movies. And at the time I was going to school, Monsters Inc. was the big thing that had come out from Disney and Pixar.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, how can it be better than that? And people were like, just wait, go see it. And again, I saw it, and it's one of those treats that I went in with an expectation, and it
Yeah.
derailed it, right? So accept these movies for what they are. Go in just expecting that you're going to see something you've never seen before, and just leave your mind open to change. Leave your mind ready to take in this new information, because Wind Rises can be up in my personal top 3, because it does that, because it's so different,
Wow.
because it's unique. and it
Wow.
doesn't follow the hero's journey that we see where Hero, or in this case his name is Hero, or no, it's Jiro, right?
Jiro. Yeah.
Jiro.
Close
Oh,
enough.
close. I was close. Um, they're not thrust upon a conquest. They don't have an item to get, a person to rescue, a place to save. He just wants to make airplanes.
Yeah. Well,
And
and even to that piece too, like basically the entire film he fails until the very end.
yep,
And even when he succeeds, he doesn't feel good about it. It's like that he has like that fleeting moment of happiness where he realizes like, oh, his 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 actual plane, what he's thought of, what he's designed, what he's created, it actually works. Finally, after years and years of failures, he has something that can actually fly. But then it's the immediate realization that, oh, this is just going to be used for war. That I don't know how to feel. Like it's that type of moment where even at the end, even as a viewer, you're just like, God, that sucks, huh? Like to have your dream finally come true and to see it alive, only to realize that someone's just gonna take it and use it for purposes that go beyond what you ever could have expected. Because all you wanted to do was just have a creation fly through the air and see the world from a different view, and yet it's going to be used to travel across waters and cause great amounts of catastrophe and destruction.
well, it's very similar to draw lines to another person around that time who also has a film out this year,
Yeah,
Oppenheimer, right?
yeah. I
So,
was actually going to bring that up earlier when you were talking about uh, how it's surprising that they made a film about this time period. Um, because yeah, I mean, even being American, like a lot of people don't view what happened at the end of World War II as being a good thing. Most people, no matter where you live, would probably see that as being quite an awful atrocity to have been committed.
yep.
And so the fact that, we have Christopher Nolan, I believe, is the one who directed it, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Yeah.
like to have him capture what took place during that time and how the development of, you know, the nuclear bomb was basically forged is, I mean, it's something that we can never forget. It's something that's imprinted, as a country in the United States of America. So I don't mind it being portrayed, especially if it's done in an accurate way. But it still doesn't make it any less challenging because it's like, yeah, that was the thing that happened. You don't want to remember it really, but you can never make it go away. It's always going to be around. So it's just something that you just kind of have to embrace and say, you know what, this was something that occurred in our history, and this is something that we've learned from, hopefully, as a country and as the world understands what not to do moving forward, and you move on. And that's kind of what you get from The Wind Rises, too. It's like with every great advancement, with every new piece of technology and whatever you're developing, right? There's always going to be a negative consequence to it. And it's not even at your own doing, right? In Jiro's case, he was making this plane just to make a plane. He only wanted to make planes. Like he repeated that nonstop throughout the movie. He's like, I just want to make planes. I just want to make planes. And everyone's like, great, make planes. But just FYI, we're going to use them to go to war with. Like, you're going to be a part of the machine in which we're developing to cause destruction. So don't forget that. And it's like, what can you do? How can you stop it? I guess he could have stopped making planes, but where would Japan be, right? Even without Jiro, like we don't know what would have happened. So it's just that it's an acceptance of realizing that with every great invention, with every new idea, there's bound to be negative consequences in the end. And It's just sort of that acceptance that you have to get through, and that's something that Jiro had to mentally get through. But it's
And not to
yeah,
mention it, not just the character in the film, like as a human, like later
yeah,
in life, he lived with that guilt, and he still worked for Mitsubishi, who, fun fact, people, Mitsubishi, the cars that do the drifts, also made the Zero airplane and were responsible for horrendous acts. BMW did some stuff too in World War II, so like, and we won't talk about the foundation of Mercedes, but
yeah. I
or
mean,
no, not Mercedes, it's Volkswagen. That's right.
well, I mean, you could even bring it home to North America and talk about NASA, but you don't have to go into that
Yeah,
either. But
we won't talk. But no, it's more that this is a movie you can learn a lot from. It can open your eyes into, number one, what an animated film can be, what a historical film can be, what a masterpiece can be in the realm of animation, because there is nothing in this film that I found goes wrong, whether that be from the fantastic music from Joe Hayashi,
mhm,
who, again, just anything he works on is pure gold
yeah,
because he's a Sashi. Sorry, I'm bad with names, but he is just fantastic in what he does. Like, anytime you hear him in a Ghibli film, or if you're playing Ni no Kuni, like, again, music's great, backgrounds are great, animation's great, story's great, characters are great. And again, we're going to circle back to the dubbed voices of the English cast, who did well reading words off a page. Because they are trained actors, obviously they have more of an inclination to be better, but it just makes the whole film such a masterpiece
yeah.
to enjoy and live through. So again, I definitely recommend you go and watch this. Please watch it with an open mind, and don't do yourself a disservice and expect that everything's going to wrap up happy and normal in the end.
I mean, in fairness, most Ghibli films don't, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's always good to go in with zero expectations, with, like you said, open mind, because you definitely need to with this film. I had done that going into the theater, no expectations, didn't really know. I mean, I didn't know anything what it was about. I knew wind was involved. That was about it. And the cover is a girl painting, so I was like, I don't know, maybe it's about art. And left very pleased. So I think if I were to give it a ranking, I mean, there's plenty of other Ghibli films I haven't seen yet. I mean, I would venture to say it's in top 7 for me. It could enter in
Nice.
top 5. I do want to revisit Nausicaa, and I do want to see Castle in the Sky. There's a couple that Ghibli films that I know I've been pushed very hard to watch and rewatch. So, but yeah, I mean, first time watching this was a real joy. So yeah, again, if you have the opportunity, please go see it in theater. Otherwise, just snuggle up, watch it again. Maybe drink a bottle of wine. Well, if you're Frank,
A
drink a bottle of wine.
bottle?
Well, I'm so used to Frank. We do a recording, and he drinks through a bottle. So sorry, a glass of wine for normal people. If you can do, if you're
For
like
normal
Frank, go
people.
for it. But yeah, normal people, glass of wine. You know, make it more. You have to be serious about it, right? It's historical. You can't be munching on popcorn and chugging down a Coca-Cola or Mountain Dew. You got to be
No,
maybe
depends.
maybe make a
Get a
charcuterie
Dr.
board.
Pepper. If you're going to drink something, you got to drink a Dr. Pepper with this film.
That's yeah, Dr. Pepper works. That's true. That's the drink of champions.
So next, I think you even hit the nail on the head. You've been pushed into watching a couple other ones. I
Yes.
think next we should do Castle in the Sky because, again,
I think you're getting overvoted though. I think we're supposed to
oh yeah,
do the
oh that's right. We're
Master
supposed to do
Cat or whatever. I can't remember the
The
name.
Cat Returns. That's right.
Yeah, sure.
It's
That one.
Isn't it Cat Returns, Howl's Moving Castle, and then we didn't have anything after that.
Maybe. I've already seen Howls though a bunch of times.
Yeah, but Howl's
But
is fun.
that's true. Howls is enjoyable.
Master Howl.
I need to watch it though in sub though, because the dubbed, if I play Howls at all in this house, my wife's ears perk up and she realizes that fucking Howl's talking, and then she like runs to whatever room it's coming from and just goes feral.
He
Screw
likes,
you.
or she likes my spark.
Screw you, Christian Bale, or no, what the fuck's his name?
Christian Bale, isn't
Yeah,
it?
Christian Bale. Yeah,
Batman.
yeah.
Batman before he was Batman.
Batman before he was Batman.
Or hold on, it came out in 2004. It was probably dubbed around the same time, was it not?
So then he was right around Ex Machina time.
Or when was he?
Or no,
Batman?
not Ex Machina, Machinist. Why did I say Ex
Oh,
Machina?
Machinist was. I watched that movie. Oh my goodness.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, scary movie.
It's very. But yeah, we will be watching more Ghibli films. We're continuing the trend of Ghibli. I enjoy this very much because Ghibli films make me happy.
So we'll do the cat returns, and then we'll see what's next because hopefully we'll have Frank back.
Yay! Frank's been doing adult things and moving, so he should be returned by the time we record our next episode.
He will be the cat returning.
Oh my gosh, what a tie-in.
Well, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have suggestions on which Ghibli film we should watch next, please send them our way by sending us a word on that app. Or you can email us at bakacopodcast@gmail.com. Join our Discord or just say, hey, watch this next. We want to thank everyone who's helped us out this far. And until next time, have fun. See ya. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.